In Celcom, I think Dato Sri Shazali, who incidentally used to come from the media industry and used to be a CEO of NTV7 and before that in the marketing side. We've actually gone out, and within that, a lot of the content that is in the mobile phone application, because we know a lot of stuff on content, people want local content that they can relate to, is being developed through Axiata, through Celcom, and this is on a platform that is running not just in Malaysia, but in Indonesia, in India, and other countries, the 9 countries. So I think this is a good example of us going out and beginning to build that platform and linkage with little firms and very talented programmers, whether it's simple applications doing music downloads or it is more complex applications around that. Axiata with that platform is also working in mobile banking, mobile wallet, in the areas of healthcare is an emerging field. WHO, for example, has a system where if you are a high blood pressure or you have a heart condition, you can connect through the mobile phone network in order to track. These are some of the emerging technologies. And I think the fact that we have that platform gives us the opportunity to start building that. A work in progress nonetheless. Maybe another thing on Axiata, just to highlight, after we went into India, we found that the Indian business models are quite interesting in that because of the socio-economic structure of India, they have to come up with technologies that basically address these markets. So as an example, the healthcare side, a lot of the very expensive healthcare equipment, scanning machines, for example, are basically designed in the West, done for the kind of Western kind of what they call it, socio-economic level. India needs much less, for example, they found, and they became experts at stripping down these machines and technology. We found this across many sectors. In the case of telecommunication, what we did was actually we took the practices that was done in India, which is basically how do you build your telecom towers in the case of mobile telephony in a cheaper way, in a much cheaper way, and so on. So really squeezing things. So if I can just use a very simple example, the switches and the machines in telecommunications can take temperatures as high as 40 degrees centigrade. And this was being run and put in an air-conditioned spaces that was running at perhaps 20 to 25 degrees. We pushed it to above 30, made sure that the legal and the warranty stuff works, and immediately save in the order of about, in this case, it was about 40 million ringgit a year just by doing this across the region. Some of those kind of innovation, if you like, or optimization came from the experience of what India was doing, actually. Number 8, very quickly, Time.com is a company that you may know. Fiber optics. Anyway, cut long story short, Time.com was one of those companies that came into our stable during the 98 crisis. We restructured it as best as we could. And then we ran a process that we actually invited bids from Malaysian entrepreneurs and from Bumiputra entrepreneurs in particular. And what happened was that the winner of this was a relatively small and unknown group. At that time, the current CEO, Afzal, was 33 years old. This was 2 years ago. The company had been losing money for 11 years. I think we managed to stabilize up to a point. Cut long story short, this company is now making money. Afzal basically and his partners had a relatively small but very interesting business in data management, and they were already globally benchmarked that the likes of Google, for example, was using them for the region. But when Afzal and his partners came and saw us, interestingly, they said, I'm not sure if Afzal is in the audience, but maybe I shouldn't embarrass him, but because it's a very positive story, he came and said, look, I'm good, I know these things, but I got no money, basically, because how do you buy, his company we valued properly was maybe worth a certain amount, but the company that they were taking over, which is running to several 100 million ringgit, was at least 10 times larger. So we told them, don't worry, we're going to beat you up and make sure that you succeed. But this is perhaps a culture element. But we created a so-called earn-out structure. What is an earn-out structure? You will earn it, you will earn your stake if you perform above a certain level. So we sat down together and set out targets over a 5-year period that if you make and improve this company, up to this point, this is Khazanah's one, but beyond this point, you will self-fund your own stake. And they are well on the way on that course, which is great because they don't have to take, crazy loans from banks and so on and so forth in order to do this. It's something that we also did with a bunch of scientists in China, actually. We're rolling out waste-to-energy ventures in China, working with the Beijing Academy of Sciences. Malaysia Airport, just a small example, are building airports in India. One of our companies going regional and bringing various Malaysian companies. Something more obvious, number 10, in high-speed broadband area, Telecom Malaysia is of course rolling this out. But perhaps this one maybe is known or not so well known. Interestingly, we are working in close partnership in a tripartite agreement. Actually, this is an innovation in contract management in Malaysia, whereby TM, Dato Azman and his team, in this case, see, in the old days, whenever we roll out big cable networks or even next generation networks in terms of telecommunication, the practice was always the real providers of this hardware as well as the expertise were actually subcontractors. And the main contractors had tended to be Malaysian companies. We know that this tended to be even be two ringgit companies sometimes. And then the real people doing the work were actually subcontractors. Of course, this was in the name of empowering our people and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, after 20, 30 years, we all know, was not working. It wasn't working well. So what did we do? In the high-speed broadband area, we sat down and worked with the Cabinet Committee on high-speed broadband and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. We flipped it around, actually. We made the ones who really got the technology as a main contractor. But the tripartite agreement is that the main contractor must then appoint subcontractors who really perform and transfer the technology over time. And it's a tripartite agreement between TM, the main contractor, and the substantive subcontractors. We are in the first year of rollout. It happens that the winner of the main contractor is actually Huawei. The rather scary, if I may use the word, Chinese company that is huge. These people basically sleep at their terminal all the time. I visited the R&D center. They basically don't go home. They sleep at the terminals. They will send in over the weekend their families. I think Samsung does this as well, as you know. And I mean, the combination of high tech and low cost is an incredibly powerful combination. Very interestingly is that even then, I think Huawei say they're learning from us in terms of how to roll out. And the 4 or 5 Malaysian subcontractors and Bumi subcontractors in particular are actually having a very tough time that they're going through, but hey, they are learning a hell of a lot and really, really working and it remains to be seen. And the HSBB, I know there's a lot of demand and unmet demand out there. Zam tells me that this is really going up and hitting the ground. So maybe that's an example of innovation on several fronts. 10 examples there. I got no time to talk about R&D departments or TM, Tenaga, and so on. I think I should stop there and perhaps take a few questions. So what I've tried to do is, rather than go through, which I'm sure other speakers have gone through, to perhaps share some examples of how we actually participate in this space within the backdrop of the various innovation ecosystem levers. Thank you.
Thank you, Berhad Tan Sri. We shall now invite questions from the floor. Yes, we've got our first question.
Tan Sri. My name is John, KJ John. I used to be in public service for 30 years almost. About 8 years of that was with MIMOS, which is Minister of Finance in company, as you would know. So my question is really specific. The government of Malaysia put in about 2 million ringgit to set up a R&D wafer plant in MIMOS. I don't understand, and I'm no engineer, Tan Sri. Yep. I'm an economist. I don't understand why, although we tried so hard to nurture MIMOS to become an R&D lab, to build, and my dream when I joined MIMOS, and I'm no engineer, but I had a little dream because I was from METI doing the second industrial master plan. Dream was, can we build chips that can be put into the wiper blades of cars so that proton cars can have rain-initiated, intensity of rain-initiated wiper blades. I'm only sorry that none of this has happened, although some of us kept dreaming. But I'm really excited to hear all your new stories and the new Khazanah and the new directions we are going. But give my R&D friends in MIMOS a chance to tell their story. And if I can facilitate somehow in making the MIMOS R&D fab become relevant, I would still like to do it, although I'm no more in government sector. You want to comment? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. It's John. Yeah, indeed, MIMOS, first of all, is under MKD, so it's in government. So we work with MIMOS indirectly, in some areas. For example, in Jaring and so on and so forth. Now, I think, as I understand it, MIMOS was formed around about 1984 or thereabouts. At the time when IMEC in Leuven, I spoke about IMEC in Leuven, which is basically the European Union's institute and entity that drives microelectronic development. My observation is as follows, and it's not just in MIMOS, but generally in what economists, and Mr. John, you're from MITI, calls industrial policy, which is basically coordinating a whole ecosystem around research, but also obviously around commercialization and the role of government in terms of nurturing. I believe in the area of innovation, there's always a long debate about nature versus nurture. So nurturing, the government nurturing through incentives or through sanctions, actually, and coordinating that. Now, my general observation in industrial policy is that one has to be very, very disciplined in the role of each entity or clusters of entity. For example, the academicians and R&D, they're good at that. I think we heard Professor from MIT earlier. You should concentrate on that as your primary concentration. If you're in the area of policy formulation, you should concentrate on that. If you are like us, we're supposed to be we are the commercialization and the business side at the firm level, we concentrate on that. And we should not mix up too much. Of course, there's some elements of secondary roles, if you like. I think in Malaysia, generally, that discipline running over several cycles is perhaps missing. And I'm a great believer in focus and concentration. I think there is no choice. One has to do that. Now, if you believe in that, then the ecosystem obviously needs to get linked up, because otherwise you get silos, and they don't work together. So I think another feature, apart from focus, is you must have the coordination, the clustering, if you like. And this is the role of government with the power to convene and get